Hey, this is Christian Roldan.
And Jordan Morris from the Seattle Sounders Football Club.
And you're listening to
This is No Study at Dis. This episode of No Study at Dis is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of No Study at Dis since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
Save by Fry! The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Ray Gibbs through the middle to crown it for Seattle! And now they truly can start the celebrations. It's the Sounders MLS Cup.
Nico Ladero leaves absolutely no doubt! The Sounders rule the region!
Seattle Sounders is going to
They've scored! They've scored! Finally!
This feels fucking awesome.
This is a tiny dog.
Is that what you young people call twerking?
That Porter says cheated.
You want to win? This is the Seattle Sounders, bro.
Welcome back to Nos Arietes. This is the Mailbag episode for ahead of week 7. I think that's, like match day 7 in MLS. Aaron, I'm Jeremiah Shan. Joining me today is Aaron Campo, my co-host. We're going to talk. We have a lot of questions that all came, I will remind listeners, from the Discord. If you want to get involved in Discord, you just got to be a supporter or above on Sounder at Heart. Get in there, and we've very lively conversations lately. Say that.
Least.
Yeah. Say what you will about the state of the team, but the state of the Discord is very active.
That's right.
So why don't we just get started?
Let's do it. This first one is from D_height. After JMO missed that, I'm putting this in air quotes. The asker did not, but I'm going to. Sitter, I mentioned something about how he hasn't been stellar this year to my very pregnant wife. Her response was like, yeah, duh, he's a new dad and has a baby at home. That makes sense, right?
I mean, it does make sense. I'm not necessarily inclined to use that as a excuse. I mean, he's now been a dad for 6 months. Actually, 6 months, that's a pretty tough period of being a dad. It's possible. I don't know what it I don't know if that means he deserves more grace. It's a plausible explanation, but he doesn't look tired to me. No. He just isn't sharp.
Yeah, I think so. I think if I were, a psychologist, which I'm not, so I'm just going to try to make guesses at what I think a psychologist would say. It seems like the ways in which that would affect him would be the opposite, right? Like he's maybe he's a little physically tired and mentally tired, but he's got peace of mind and purpose in life. And so, in front of goal, maybe you wouldn't expect maybe you'd expect him to be a little sharper. I don't know. But I definitely think that there's all sorts of off-field things that can impact player performance. But I just like the degree to which it impacts players' performance is so completely unknowable that I think it's fun to speculate about. I mean,
it is.
There's nothing wrong with that. But I think ultimately it's kind of a fruitless exercise.
Yeah, but since you wanted to put sitter in air quotes, what did you make of the chance that he missed? I will go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a chance that you want him to finish.
Yes.
I think that the extent to which it was a gimme has been dramatically overstated. I think that's a chance that elite strikers miss too. I won't say more often than not, obviously that's not true, but I think the highest probability of that being a finish that I've seen is 54%. Well, that's 46% of the time that's not finished, right? Like that's, and there is debate over whether or not, the 54% is accurate. So
I've seen that's an interesting one because the XG value is all over the map. I feel like on that one, which I guess kind of speaks to we've had this discussion a lot about not getting too wrapped up in single game XG or single. You really can't get wrapped up in like single shot XG.
Yeah.
In part because there's a lot of disagreement over like what any one shot is worth. It's just in the aggregate, you sort of like get a collective value of this stuff. I thought it was interesting. Albert Rusnak at training on Tuesday, he said that's something that Jordan finishes 10 times out of 10 in training. I think he's maybe being a little hyperbolic there.
Yeah.
But point being, it would have been good to finish it. I think if he misses that in the 15th minute and he has a couple other goals this year, no one's really getting hyper focused on it. I'll also note Rui Diaz missed a very similar chance.
Yes.
Off of a Jordan Morris pass earlier in the game, and no one seems to be too worked up over that one. I don't know. We talked about this a little bit in the main show this week, so I don't want to get too deep into it, but it is always amazing to me, the discourse around Jordan. And I'm not even blaming D height here. He asked a totally fair question. Yeah. I just kind of got on my hobby horse there, so I apologize.
Fair. To me, a sitter is you've rounded the keeper.
Yeah, exactly.
The ball, you've just got to tap it in. That's a sitter to me.
Yes,
this was
sort
a
of the way I think
very good chance, but not my definition of a sitter.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. All right, this is from Bill Jones Trumpet. He says, I understand why LA wouldn't invest in the infrastructure to drain a pitch. I'm curious, how many MLS fields have the technologies that ours does to both heat and drain precipitation?
Well, I'll tell you how many should have them, and that is every single one of them. It is unconscionable at this level in the sport, in a league with a lot of money, more money than ever flowing into this league, that we could have one game that was so dramatically impacted by the rain. And I don't think it impacted the Sounders any more than the Galaxy. But both teams had to play on it. So it's not an excuse, but it made the game worse. I think it's fair to say, especially early on. And then also to have a game have to be rescheduled because of it. It's unacceptable to me. I don't understand how it's possible.
And apparently the scientists think this kind of thing is going to become more normal. So we might want to invest in rain and heated pitch technology around MLS, because it's probably not going to get more temperate.
Yeah, that seems like a fair assessment.
I think is the scientific consensus on that.
Yeah. All right. This next one is from Nexus. The first 5 games of the season have obviously been rough, and a lot of hats have been hung on the injuries for lack of performance, especially in the first 4 games. But it is still undeniable that the team has played poorly. With Schmetz finally saying some spots are on the line in the coming weeks, is anyone particularly in danger? The main question is, have any of the presumed starters at the start of the season played themselves out of their spot if the whole team is healthy? For me, Alex Nuhu and maybe Reagan have all had the worst performances for the healthy starter players, but haven't played themselves out of the lineup yet.
I think that's a fair assessment. I'm trying to think who I think are the most secure starters. Like Yamar is probably pretty secure. Christian is probably pretty secure. And I mean, a lot of guys might, like, I think this week, for instance, I think they're all relatively secure. But if at some point you would think that if the season really doesn't turn around, and he's going to have to start changing the lineup. And I guess maybe in the spirit of this question, who is the most insecure spot? Who's the player who has the most competition, I guess, is really the issue. And I think, I think that number 9 spot is going to be really interesting to watch, because, whether it's Jordan, Raul, or frankly, Danny Masovsky, I could see even getting in there. I mean, if you have a whole healthy roster, and you have Pedro de la Vega, you don't necessarily, and like if Jordan still isn't scoring in a, if we're a month from now and De La Vega's back and Rui Diaz is, I don't know. I think the number 9 spot to me is the one that might be the most up for grabs in a sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think Alex also has some competition. I mean, he was on the pitch against the Galaxy, but he wasn't playing right back. But I don't know that Cody Baker. I think Cody Baker did enough things right that I said I'd like to see more of him. I don't think he did enough right that I
would want to be starting.
Yeah, he needs to be starting the next game in Alex's place. I think a lot of it right now, though, is just that if you're one of those guys that has been playing poorly, you're probably going to have a little bit of time to reverse course because right now they're kind of hamstrung. Sorry,
like
no pun intended.
All those, like Nuhu could also, like if Reed Baker Whiting comes, like I think the only reason I don't put Nuhu on the list is because I'm a little skeptical that Cody Baker is going to get starts over him, like a perfectly healthy Nuhu. But if Reed was fit and ready to go, I could see him, taking his spot. So I think it's tough. I think it has almost more to do with who is the replacement than how bad is this player playing. And I said Jordan as my first answer, and I'll stick with it. But I also I feel like it's important to note that I don't think Jordan has been by any stretch the worst or even one of the worst players. I just think that he plays a position where at some point you have to just like, it's very easy to look at your stats and say you aren't doing enough.
Yeah. I think that you do have to do that. I'm not sure that I love the process that would leave you to the conclusion that Jordan is the right player to replace with the way the roster is right now.
Yeah, no, right. No, I agree. It's there's got to be more. I mean, because like right now, I think Jordan to me is very secure. Like I thought he looked really good on the left wing.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, if Pedro de la Vega, Leo Chu, you got a full roster of choices, I could see the squeeze put on a couple of the attacking positions, but
Absolutely.
We'll see.
Yeah.
All right. This is from Everett Sounder. He says, what's your read on the underlying numbers for the Sounders during this winless run? Are they encouraging for us to turn things around, or is it time to panic? And I think this is a note that I'll let you, actually, this is a question for you. This is your note. I'll let you get into it.
Yeah. So I have some numbers here, some of those underlying numbers in question. There was a little thread, a mini thread, I guess we'll call it, from Harrison Crow of American Soccer Analysis on X.com the other night, which I actually logged into my X account to read.
Why are you calling it X?
I don't know, because I think it's kind of funny.
It is funny. I just was thinking about this today about how I don't think I'll ever in my life call it that, but go ahead anyway.
I would never call it that seriously, but I do think it's one of those things where I started doing it ironically so much that now it's like how I started saying no worries ironically like 25 years ago, and now I just say it.
All right.
Anyway, so I did log into whatever we're calling that
you
site
can call
now.
it X if you want. Sure.
Just to look at the thread and basically Harrison's point was, I think the exact words he used, I couldn't click the link and look at it now, were that the Sounders have been the most unlucky team that they have seen in the history of ASA.
That must be a larger data set than he was sharing.
I think so. Yeah. The full tweet of the first tweet in the thread is: the Sounders thus far have been one of the unluckiest teams in ASA data history. Not sure what the pulse on here is, but I can't imagine happy is the most immediate feeling springing to mind. I really think this is a good team, even with JP and PDLV. Harrison is a much smarter guy than I am. And so I was kind of happy to read this because I've been pretty consistent in feeling the same way. And I've definitely get the sense that that's not the most common way of folks are feeling, and I don't blame anyone for that. But those underlying numbers, so we're 5 games in. 5 games is generally kind of considered the point at which there's enough of an XG sample that you can start doing some more serious analysis. I like a bigger sample, but I do think you can pick up some trends from 5 games. And so ASA has the Sounders at 7.4 xG, 6.83 xG against, and that they have a goal difference minus X goal difference, expected goal difference of negative 3.82. So basically they have been 4 goals worse on the scoreboard than you would expect based on XG, which over a sample of 5 games where you have not lost any of the games by more than 1 goal is enough to really skew things, I would say. Based on XG, the Sounders are at 7.6 expected points. I know that for myself, if they had 7 or 8 points right now, I'd be thrilled, because I think that would be a team missing a lot of key players who are grinding out results, right? And that's I think all you can ask for from this team right now. And I think what you should be
very similar to what they were last year.
Yeah, exactly. And also goals added, their difference is the 6th highest in MLS right now. So the underlying numbers don't love the Sounders, right? I think they see them so far as a pretty middle of the road team. But I think when the gravity of the injury situation became apparent, early on, I think everybody that I talked to, or most people that I talked to about this stuff, which is mostly you and Lickett, to be fair, but felt like, hey, if we can just we've got some easy games in this run, we should be able to grind out these results, and then we can get healthy and we're on our way. And I think that for the most part, they have played well enough to do that and gotten really unlucky. But I also think they've had uncharacteristic mistakes. I think there have been situations where they haven't done themselves any favors tactically or in terms of the team selection. So I think it's a combination of things. But I do think if you are looking for encouragement and you're willing to get it from some of the underlying numbers and advanced statistics, there is a little kernel of it in there that this team has not played as bad as their place in the table and the number of goals they've put up would maybe suggest.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. It is not a team that's played awfully. It's a team that has gotten awful results.
Yes.
And, the good news, it's like a good news, bad news thing, though. On one hand, you expect this to even out, but it could go either way. Like, they're either going to continue playing as well as they are, and the results are going to improve, or they'll stop playing this well and the results will start to look like you're expecting.
Right. Yeah.
And so there's no guarantee of which way it's going to go, but I do think it's fair. It's fair to point out that this team has played better than their record suggests. And at the same time, I wrote this week about how, you are what your record says you are. And right now the record says the Sounders are bad. So it's up to them to sort of change that and start getting some wins. And but there's reason to think that can happen, I guess, is the point here.
I think that sometimes there can be a tendency to conflate, here's an analysis of what I think has happened, or here's what the numbers say, with someone saying, actually, everything is fine and you shouldn't feel bad or you shouldn't be upset. I think that is really a really common disconnect, where it's like, you can say the numbers actually look better than the reality, and there's a reason for that to feel encouraging. And also, I am super pissed off about the way the season has gone so far.
Yeah.
So this next one is from Chico Flores, and hopefully it is remains in the hypothetical category. But if Schmetzer was to be removed, who would be an ideal replacement? Someone with MLS experience or someone from outside the league?
So I would say that my suspicion is that the Sounders will hire someone from within MLS that has some kind of connection to the organization. Maybe not literally working here before, but has, that's sort of their MO. Craig Weibel being a great example. He was someone who was both from the region, had experience with the team, knew a lot of people in the team, also happened to have previously worked for Garth. My suspicion that's the way that this would go. I don't know if I don't know. Ideally, is that the way they should go? Should they be going outside of their kind of well-worn path. Hervé Diesse, who is the Tacoma Defiance coach, is a great example of this, as someone who they just really went outside their network and found this guy basically through an online application, I believe is the story I heard. And, so you can definitely find interesting people that way, and maybe you get more interesting candidates. And I think it will be fascinating, because at some point Brian will be replaced, whether or not it's this year or next year or years from now, he's going to get replaced. And it's going to be fascinating, I think, to see the direction they go, because I think it says a lot about what they want to be as a club. And in some ways they almost fell into Brian as their head coach. I don't necessarily think that they set out with the idea, but during Brian's time here, he really shaped what it meant to be the Sounders. And he sort of he was able to distill it down into something that was a statement, and that really, I think, is the ethos of the Sounders. And I don't know if he came up with this statement or not, but he's said it many times about how the club is the relationship between the club is the relationship between the fan and everyone else, and the media and everything. And it'll be interesting. I just think it'll be fascinating. It'll be a fascinating exploration in where this team is going long term when they have to eventually replace him.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that, other than I think getting Wilfred Nancy would be funny, because it would be really funny to steal Columbus's manager twice.
That would be very funny. Yeah. All right, this is from The List. He says, is the Montreal game a must-win? Do the Sounders need to win this game to start the turnaround? And how bad would it be to lose this game for the rest of the season?
Is it a literal must-win? Obviously not. There's still 27 games left after this one. 28 after this one. That's right, because we only played 5. So that's plenty of time to turn things around. I think in the colloquial sense, as most people understand it, yeah, I think so. I think that Montreal is not a great team. You're at home. There were encouraging things to build off, I think, in the Galaxy game.
They'll be healthier than they've been all year. They'll be healthier.
And I just, if you feel like they should have ground out a result against Colorado and Austin, Montreal's better than those teams, but not, I think, by leaps and bounds better than those teams. The Sounders should beat Montreal at home. And there's only so many games where you should win them at home in a season that you can drop and expect things to go your way.
Yeah.
And
they've already dropped points on 2 of those.
Yep, for sure. And so I think, and I also think that I believe that the concept of momentum and the mental aspect is overblown by fans a lot of the time, because I think we're just looking for narratives a lot of the time, right? But I do think that not losing the first 6 games, but going winless in the first 6 games, 3 of those against mediocre to bad teams at home, having trouble scoring, that cannot be good for the mindset.
No.
And it could lead to changes being made where they don't need to be made, where things that are working are changed because there's just this desire to make some kind of a change that makes things worse. There are a lot of instances of this. So
very easy to go on tilt, as they say in the poker world.
Absolutely. So you just gotta, you gotta control the controllables, remove those external factors, and beat a team that you should beat at home. And personally, I think they will. I feel weirdly confident that they're going to win this game pretty comfortably.
Yeah, it's one of those games where the Sounders have talked about this many times, where it's like you're playing a desperate opponent and you can't really, and that's sometimes why you lose to teams that you feel like you should beat, is because they just have this grander sense of desperation. And gosh, you would think the Sounders would be at that point now, where it's like just throwing everything they have at it. But anyway.
All right, this next one is from Eric. In a recent podcast, Jeremiah said, and I quote, "Obviously, the Seattle Times is the most important media outlet for the Sounders." That's an approximate quote from Eric's memory. Is that actually true? In my world, it seems like Sounder at Heart has far more impact on the Sounders. I regularly see Jeremiah influencing the dialogue taking place at MLSsoccer.com and podcasts like the Total Soccer Show. So is Jeremiah just being humble, or am I way too deep in the hype machine to accurately judge influence in the wider world?
Well, I think there's two audiences that are maybe being conflated here.
Yes.
The audience that Eric is talking about, and by the way, thank you. I will take this as a compliment, and I won't let it go to my head. But I do think there's sort of like we'll call it like the sicko sort of audience, and these are people that are really inside baseball. These are people that are listening to Extra Time Radio. These are people who are listening to the Total Soccer Show. These are people who are reading Sounder at Heart. These are not necessarily the average fan. These are people that are already sort of committed. The Sounders already have those people's money, and the Sounders treat Sounder at Heart as a pretty important outlet for them. But what I'm talking about here is sort of the normie fan, the fan who might not go to every game, or if they do go to every game, they probably aren't consuming that much about the team outside of game day. And those are the people that are probably, and the Seattle Times has a huge audience. Sounder at Heart has something like 5,000 members in our mailing list. That's a pretty robust collection of people. But the Seattle Times has like many multiples of that on, that are receiving their newspaper, and the Sounders want to reach. Those are all new. Like most of the 5,000 subscribers to Sounder at Heart are. And by the way, that's not our paid subscriber list. That's our total subscriber list. Just to be clear, I would love to be at that point. But yeah, like most of the people that are subscribing to Sounder at Heart are already Sounders fans that are already giving their money to the Sounders, or they were at one point. Whereas like virtually, every reader of the Seattle Times is a potential new customer. And so in that way, I think they see the Seattle Times as more growth opportunity, where Sounder at Heart is more their core, audience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. I think that everyone in every field of entertainment, sports, music, TV, movies, whatever, everyone loves the hardcore fans, but that's not who makes the money.
Right.
It's the more casual fans, and Seattle Times just has a lot more exposure.
Yeah. That's which I don't begrudge them at all. All right, this is from Spaceman Spliff. He says, do the recent experiences with the end of Nico and Raul's contract cause the front office to shift their thinking around if these should be 5+ year commitments? That's something that Garth once said. That's my interjection into the question. Yep. If not, are we going to exclusively target younger players to avoid the declining performance at the tail end of the commitment? What percentage of a DP's contract should we be comfortable with in typical decline ages?
I think that the important thing to remember about Nico's contract and about Raul Ruidiaz's contract is that Nico re-signed in 2020, Raul re-signed in 2021. Sounders won the CCL in 2022. I would guess that if they did not think that they had the core to win a Champions League, that those decisions may have gone differently. Maybe, maybe they try to sell Raul. Maybe they part ways with Nico earlier. I think that they made those decisions specifically because they thought they had a chance to win the thing that they've been trying to win for a very long time. And it worked. They did it. But I think that lots of sports history, you can look back at a lot of teams who went all in on a core to win a championship, who won the championship and ended up struggling afterwards because they had contracts on the books that were no longer productive. And I think that that's just the risk you take sometimes. And it's certainly put them in a bad situation the last couple of years, right? Like it definitely has. It's hamstrung them to some degree. But I mean, they made the playoffs last year. They weren't great, no, but they made the playoffs. And I think the degree to which this has been like a negative is kind of overstated, because if the trade-off is winning the Champions League, and I think it objectively is, right? I don't think they win the Champions League if they don't re-sign Nico and Raul.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that it's going to be a case by case thing, right? Like if they've got a 32-year-old whose contract is expiring and they are a mediocre team and don't have championship aspirations, no, they're probably not going to resign them in the future, even if they're still relatively productive. But I think if they had the same decision to make, even if you could give them a crystal ball and say you're going to win an MLS Cup, or you're going to win a Champions League, or you're going to go deep in a Club World Cup, or whatever it is, but you might have a down year or two, they're going to take that trade every time.
I also think it's worth just kind of putting yourself a little bit in the mindset of when they were re-signing these players. It's really hard for a front office to tell the player, the fan base, whatever else, we know you are coming off a really successful and productive season, but we're not going to resign you because we're worried that in 3 years we're not going to be getting the same value out of this contract.
Yeah.
Like that's a tough sell for everyone, you know, because invariably what's going to happen is that player in the first 2 years or whatever after they leave are going to be playing like they were playing when you had them to re-sign. What I do think though is maybe different is I do think the Sounders are probably going to target younger players for DP contracts. Maybe not always young DPs like they did with Pedro de la Vega, but I don't know that they're going to sign a 29-year-old with the idea that player is going to be around for 5 more years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that might, so I do think to that degree, they are sort of changing their thinking. But I don't know what's going to, the next time they have a Nico or Raul type of player who is entering like their age 31 season and they have to, and it's tough. Like that's a tough year to have to decide on, right? Because it's like they're probably still productive, but
right. Yeah.
that at the end of the contract they probably won't be.
Yeah, and I mean, I think both Nico and Raul were players that if you were going to guess what their aging curve would look like, you maybe wouldn't have expected it to be as drastic as it was.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Raul for sure. I mean, I think I was surprised that he fell off that he struggled to stay healthy so much.
Yeah.
Because he really had not. This was kind of been an interesting thing. There was this debate on in the Discord actually about Raul and how someone said that he had a history of soft tissue injuries before his contract, and it was like, well, he got that hamstring injury right at the end of 2021, but he really had only gotten one other soft tissue injury in his career, and this was like a heel injury that cost him a handful of games. I don't even know if a heel injury is really a soft tissue. So it's, I think we also have to be a little bit careful with our revisionism about the past. But anyway.
Yeah. Also, players are injury prone until they're not, and they are reliable until they're not. Like Brad Evans, for so much of Brad Evans' career, he could not stay healthy. And then he was one of the most reliable players the Sounders had for like 3 or 4 seasons, and then so you really never know. It's always.
And then Christian Roldan was an Iron Man until all of a sudden he got a few injuries and now he gets hurt just like any normal person.
Yep. The next one is from Blue Red. What is your read on the front office's appetite to bring in a new number 9 this summer? And would their urgency have changed at all given the product on the field these first 5 games? I know Pepo is probably a month or so away from return at this point, but given what we've seen, it feels naive to expect him alone to fix everything. Follow-up, would they bring someone in only if there are in fact roster rule changes this summer, or do you think there's a chance they'd buy out Raul to make it happen?
So my expectation right now is that they will not sign a high level number 9 in the summer unless they are also able to move someone. So if they can find someone to take, let's just use Javier Arriaga as an example. If they can get something in return for Arriaga and open up that roster space, I would imagine that they would be inclined to go look for another player. I do think and I don't know, I don't have any inside information on this. My suspicion, though, is that if they're going to go out and sign a number 9, that, they have to have some eye on 2025 and the Club World Cup. And I would think that they want to spend that they need to be open to spending a lot of money on that player. And I'm a little skeptical that they're going to do that in the summer. Even though I know that it would be a good time to do it, but I don't see the gears moving already to go out and sign to make an 8-figure commitment to a number 9 this summer. I would love to be wrong about that. I suppose it's possible that they, if Raul continues to struggle, I would hope that buying him out is something that's under consideration. But I don't have nothing I've heard indicates to me that that's the plan, for better or for worse.
I do think it's worth. I know that historically the Sounders have liked to sign players in the summer. But I think that the transfer market in MLS has shifted enough. Like, it's enough of a destination from enough leagues with enough talent. Where you're not looking at free agents as much that are out of contract in Europe, and you're not looking at players who have fallen out of a team's plans. Like, your MLS teams are actually able to go out and get players that they weren't able to do before. And I think, all things being equal, you'd rather have those players preseason. So I do think that calculus has changed a little bit.
Yeah. I think it's too. I mean, just that they were able to get a player like a Pedro de la Vega in the winter, I think says a lot about the kind of player that's becoming more available at that point in the year.
Yep, for sure. There are some interesting free agents in the summer. If they were able to move somebody, I could see them potentially. There's maybe some attractive targets that they could get at like a TAM level.
There was the Japanese guy that they had kind of looked at before that whose name I'm skipping I think pretty sure he's a free agent in the summer.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is from Interpersonal. That's he's actually a Sounder Heart contributor. So this is a long question. We're just going to kind of paraphrase it a little bit. Basically, he was asking, there are rumors that the teams qualifying for the 2025 Club World Cup, speaking of which, may receive up to $50 million in prize money. Have you heard anything about those rumors? Do you get the sense that the Sounders are expecting a cash windfall? What might the Sounders do with such all that cash coming in at once?
So I'll leave the questions about the rumors and how plausible this sounds to you, because I think you would have a better sense than I do. But I do think that the odds of the Sounders getting $50 million and spending that on the roster are extremely low, I would say. I think they're probably, it would definitely,
they would not $50 million. I don't think they would put all $50 million.
Right.
I would think
they would definitely invest some of it, for sure.
Yeah, you would think that would give them a lot of, suddenly a $20 million investment on a player or players seems much more reasonable when you have a $50 million cash infusion.
For sure.
I am a little skeptical of that amount. That seems like an outrageous amount of money to commit to giving to every team. I mean, keep in mind, so $50 million is effectively the entire revenue of the Sound, according to the various reporting sports business kind of publications out there. The Sounders do something like $60 million in total revenue in a year. So for FIFA to just be like, what if we just doubled that?
Right. And there are clubs in the Club World Cup who are making significantly less revenue than that.
Many, I would say even, there's going to, it just seems like an outrageous amount of money to commit to teams that don't really have, it's one thing to say, okay, we need Real Madrid and Liverpool to make the trip. We're going to guarantee them $50 million. Okay. That I buy. But I don't know. I would love to be wrong, but here's what I will say is there was some suggestion that that the Sounders should just sort of assume they're going to get a bunch of money and go spend it. I don't think that's how it works. I
Yeah,
think you're going to want
used
to know
do that, and it didn't turn out well.
Yeah, I think you kind of want to know what you're getting before you spend it, you know?
Yeah.
And so, and because I think part of that's practical is that if they're really getting a $50 million windfall, you can go, that's going to change the kind of player you can afford to go get.
Yeah.
Like, why would you go buy a $6 million player if you know you have a $50 million windfall and you can go buy a $12 million player?
Yeah.
You know,
For three.
or three.
And still have, 20,
and still have a lot of, right,
left.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know what to make of this rumor other than that's a lot of money, and I've seen it before, and I think we wrote about it even in Sounder Heart, but we are not doing the reporting on that. I think we were just regurgitating something that we read online. I don't know. I guess I could have gone and found the story we wrote on it, but I guarantee it was not my original reporting.
Yeah. Would be pretty cool though.
It would be cool. It would be really cool.
It would also be cool if I won the Powerball tomorrow.
Right. I mean, it is sort of the equivalent of that.
It is.
But anyway, well, I think that's it. That's all the questions. So thanks for everyone for sending these in. I enjoyed doing these because it just gives us lots of things to talk about. So thank you to everyone sending in questions. If in case you needed the reminder, all these questions come from our Discord. If you don't know what Discord is, it's essentially like a private server where we talk about the Sounders and have lots of lively discussions. There's a few hundred members in the Discord. It's pretty active. Our game threads are a lot of fun. And you can get on there if you are supporting Sounder at Heart at the $80 a year level, I think is the right, something like 80, maybe it's $85 now, something like that. But yeah, if you want to do that, we'd love to have you. And if you're a lower tier member, you can upgrade and get that access. All that said, thank you for listening. Thank you to our sponsor, Full Pull Wines. Thank you to everyone who is a paying member. This has been a really exciting time for us. I can't get over saying that, but yeah, signing off for Aaron Campo and Lickett. I'm Jeremiah Shan. This is Nos Audietes, and we will catch you next time.
We love you. Let's win another one.